Hey guys, this is Scott Tabor. In this video, I want to show you how to play a walking bass line and also play the chords on top of the bass so that it sounds like two instruments playing at the same time. This is going to be a great coordination exercise for the left hand, and we're going to learn a little music theory as we go. For this walking bass line study, we're going to be using one of the most common jazz progressions, and we're calling it a 2-5-1-6. You may have seen these Roman numerals before. What's happening here is we have a major scale, which you've heard your whole life. And for every note in that scale, we can derive a chord from it. The first one will be major. The second note in the major scale always gives you a minor chord. And then we have minor again, major, major, minor, diminished, and then we're back to what we call the one chord. So there's a Roman numeral for each of those numbers. When they're uppercase, it means it's major. When it's lowercase, they're minor. And the little circle means diminished, just a weird kind of necessary evil chord that we get on the last note of the major scale. Now we're making all of these diatonic seventh chords, meaning for every chord in the key, there's a seventh we can get by counting to 7 actually from that note, and it gives us a certain type of chord, and we're stuck with whatever the notes are in the major scale, so we always get this pattern. Major seventh on the 1, minor seventh on the 2, minor seventh on the 3, major seventh on the 4, dominant seventh on the 5, minor seventh on the 6, and a minor 7 flat 5, or a half diminished we call it, on the 7th note of the major scale. So a 2-5-1-6 progression would be D minor 7, then G7, then C major 7, and A minor 7. So these are ways to play those chords that are pretty standard, but we're going to play little snippets of these, of what you might call shell voicings, for the most part, not for every chord, but for most of them. We're going to play our middle finger on the 5th fret of the 5th string. That's a D note. Skip a string, ring finger also on the 5th fret. That's a minor 7th, a C note. And your pinky plays F, the 6th fret of the B string. So that is essentially D minor 7th. There's no 5th in there in the chord, but it doesn't matter because the 5th doesn't really tell us too much about the chord. Then we're going to take that exact same shape down here to make a G7. We have G, skip a string, F on the same fret, 3rd fret, and pinky is going to play the major third of that chord called B. They look the same. Now let's talk about what we're actually going to do when we play these chords. So it's going to sound like this. So it seems like there's a lot going on there in the bass. But first we want to pinpoint where all of these root notes are, and it's really just a little rectangle or a little box on the guitar. So if you need to find a 2-5-1-6 progression in any key, we can just do this. Go to the 5th string on any fret, just pick a random note, and then go to the ceiling. Now go down 2 frets to your left, and then go to the floor. Those are our 4 root notes for these chords. So this note would be the 2. This will be the 6, this will be the 5, that makes sense. You go backwards from 6 to 5, and then our 1 is here. So you can count it from different places or whatever, but this is the 2, then our next one is our 5, and then we have our 1, and then our 6. Some songs will go 1, 6, 2, 5, which is the same order, just starting on the 1. Like the song from that movie Big with Tom Hanks, Heart and Soul. A lot of old doo-wop songs also use that progression. But remember, it's the same progression that we're doing. We're just starting on the 2 instead of the 1. So to get into this rhythm, let's just stay on D minor 7th chord. We'll switch over to G7 in a minute. We're just staying on this chord, and every beat we're playing the root of the chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, these remaining 2 notes, let's play those in between on the and of 1. Now we're shuffling here. This is a jazz swing sound. So instead of playing 1 and 2, and we have to play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 like that. So the and is going to sound like 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. Now what we want to do with the walking bass line is stay on the strong beats on the root of the chord, and on the weak beats we're going to play neighbor tones or notes from the key or really almost anything that we want. But to get there, we go like this. Now 1, 2, 3, 4. So the 1 and the 3 are our strong beats. The 2 and the 4 are weak, so they're not going to be the root notes of the chord. So let's go like this. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. Okay, now we're ready to move to the G7 chord and just do this exact same thing. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. Let's put those two together and switch. This is where it starts to get tricky. 1 and 2, 3, 4. Now switch. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. And the important thing here is to play these chords, not the bass notes, but the upper notes of the chord, nice and loud so they ring out, and don't take the pressure off those two fingers. You just imagine an upright bass player and a piano player in like a piano lounge. We want to hear those chords sustaining while the bass is going boom, boom, playing on every single beat. So the louder you can do it, the longer it will ring out and it'll sound better. Now let's go to the other two chords. We're going to play C major 7 this way. And our A minor 7th, we're going to be back to the 3-note chord shell voicing that we were doing before, which is this guy right here. Okay, so let's just do that same thing we just did on these two chords now. We're going to go 1 and 2, 3, 4, then switch to this guy. 1 and 2, 3, 4. Now let's put all those together. And remember, 1 and 3, strong beats. 2 and 4, weak beats. 1, 2, 3. This is all 4 chords now. 1 and 2, 3, 4, G7. 1 and 2, 3, 4, C major 7. 1 and 2, 3, 4, A minor 7. 2, 3, and then we're back. Now that might take a while to coordinate that. Now you notice that we're not playing any open strings or anything, so you can do this anywhere, at least initially what we're doing here. In a minute we are going to use some open strings, but in any key, again, you can go anywhere on the guitar and go. Now it doesn't sound great yet because the last note of every measure is kind of a note that doesn't lead into what the next chord is, but this is just a practice study for getting into this walking bass. But take a few moments or a couple days to get that down, and then we'll add other notes in on those weak beats to create a sense of momentum and push to that next chord. And by the way, the momentum is a good word for walking bass. That's what it's really all about. We want to have this sense of forward motion, and that's not only because we're playing on every beat, which we're doing in the bass, but also harmonically we want to lead into those chords. So the last note of every measure, it would be great if we could play a note that leads in or pushes into the root of the next chord. We can call that simply a lower neighbor, just 1 half step, 1 fret to the left of wherever you're headed. So if we do that, we're going to go 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1. Let's try adding some different notes in. On the D minor 7, we can do what we were doing. And then play A flat, nice and nasty, down to G. And then play the open E string. Doesn't sound too bad, it's in the key, right? And we'll do the same thing going into the C major 7, play that open string, A. It kind of foreshadows the chord we're getting to, then G sharp to A minor 7. Now here, instead of going to G sharp, which we just did, which we certainly can do again, we can play the open E string, and that's a happy accident because that's the 5th of that chord. So it actually works out. And then we've got our C sharp, and then we're done. So check it out. So you might notice sometimes I'm not just playing those chords on the and of 1, but I'm also playing them on the and of 4 every now and then, just for some variety. And at the end of the progression, it sounds especially appropriate to do that there on that A minor 7th chord, to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now watch this one. See, I did it again there. 1. It just kind of tells the listener that we've completed a cycle, that 4 measures of the progression. Now, if you know how these chords work together, we can also play what we call the cycle of fourths. We can start on the 2, then to the 5, then we have our 1, then our 4, then in the relative minor key we have the 2, which used to be the 7 chord, now it's the 2. Then we have E7 is our 5, that's the harmonic minor scale. And then we have our 6th chord, but now we're calling it the 1 because it's in the relative minor key. So we have D minor 7, G7, C major 7, F major 7, B minor 7 flat 5, E7, and then A minor. And the A minor can become an A7, that's a secondary dominant, if you know what that is, and that leads us back to D minor more emphatically, but we don't have to do that. So let's try this whole thing we've been talking about using the cycle of fourths. So I hope you like this exercise and it gets you thinking about jazz progressions more. You should try to play this in every key that you can. Some keys you might not be able to play any open strings at all, but that's okay. You can still play those neighbor tones and you can experiment with what sounds good to you. And don't forget, there's a little rectangle hiding on the guitar on the 6th and 5th strings that's going to allow you to find a 2, 5, 1, 6 progression in any key.